the worst scandal to happen at your school? Part 1. The math teacher left his wife of 18 years for one of the graduating seniors. My English teacher in the 11th grade was sleeping with the whole girls' basketball team in exchange for straight A's. I actually failed English that year, but when that made the news my school said I didn't have to go anymore because he wasn't doing the grading properly. Everyone who had his class got a B. Girl A decided to fight Girl B in class. Girl A ripped Girl B's real hair out, broke her nose, and crippled her. Girl B was sent to the emergency room. Girl A was suspended for 2 weeks. They were both in 7th grade. 1 year in exams days they were trying to add a new method to prevent cheating where a man from the administration comes to every class before every exam and collects students' phones while sticking a sticker with a number on each phone and giving the same sticker to the student so he can get his phone after school without anyone taking someone else's phone that looks alike or something. This was working at first and a bit preventing cheating until one day some guy sneaked into our high school and came as the man who collects the phones while he wasn't. He stole the whole high school phones and went lol. A student that was in the grade above me killed his girlfriend and buried her by the train tracks right behind the school. My 5-year-old son broke character and talked to me like an adult. This happened about 2 years ago and I was so blown away I took notes and told my wife about it, so I still have the notes on my phone. My 5-year-old son was pretty typical for his age, always goofing around, never serious, always working some angle to negotiate treats or buying whatever thing was at the top of his list this week. Kids have a selfish worldview and that's mostly understandable because they haven't matured yet. So when my son asked me to go for a walk, just the two of us, I immediately laughed and thought, okay, what's he going to ask for? We start walking and I ask, what's on your mind, buddy? He said, nothing really, I just wanted to have some time to be with you and be peaceful and be out in nature. Wow, okay, this is progress, I thought. Then he said, I want you to know you're the best dad I've ever had. You really do help me and my sister a lot and you're really very nice even though we don't usually tell you. So I just wanted to say thank you for everything and that I want to be near you always. By this point the only reason I wasn't completely crying my eyes out is that I thought it was some kind of a joke or lead up to ask for something. This was totally out of character, especially at this age. I managed to croak out something like, I'm really glad to hear that and I love you very much. Then we just enjoyed the rest of the walk. It really felt like for a moment I was speaking to a soul who has had several lives. You're the best dad I've ever had, and wanted to speak directly to me instead of play the role of a child. I'm so glad it happened and it's something I will never forget. Later he went right back to being the same old goofy kid that I love.
What is the laziest thing you've ever done? Used to have one of those clap on, clap off lights in my room. I hated clapping, so I just made an audio recording of me clapping and mapped it to one of the programmable keys on my keyboard. I always heat things in the microwave for 111 or 222 because I'm too lazy to move my fingers to the 0 before I hit start. I was laying in bed with the light on and wanted to go to sleep with it off. I called my house from my cell phone and asked for myself in a disguised voice. When my mom came in to bring me the phone, I asked her to turn the light out when she left. Hung up both phones and went to sleep. I was once on a US military ship, having breakfast in the wardroom, officer's lounge, when the operations officer walks in. This guy was the definition of not a morning person. He's still half asleep, bleary-eyed, basically a zombie with a bagel. He sits down across from me to eat his bagel and is just barely conscious. My back is to the outboard side of the ship, and the morning sun is blazing in one of the portholes, putting a big bright-ass circle of light right on his barely conscious face. He's squinting and chewing and basically just remembering how to be alive for today. It's painful to watch. But then Zombie Ops stops chewing, slowly picks up the phone, and dials the bridge. In his well-known I'm still totally asleep voice, he says, "Hee, it's Ops. Could you shift our bar pat? Yeah, 165. Thanks," and puts the phone down, and then he just sits there. Squinting, waiting, and then, ever so slowly, I realize that that big blazing spot of sun has begun to slide off the zombie's face and onto the wall behind him. After a moment it clears his face and he blinks slowly a few times and the brilliant beauty of what I've just witnessed begins to overwhelm me. By ordering the bridge to adjust the ship's back and forth patrol by about 15 degrees, he's changed our course just enough to reposition the sun off of his face. He's literally just redirected thousands of tons of steel and hundreds of people so that he could get the sun out of his eyes while he eats his bagel. I am in awe. He slowly picks up his bagel and for a moment I'm terrified at the thought that his own genius may escape him, that he may never appreciate the epic brilliance of his laziness. But between his next bites he pauses, looks at me, and gives me the faintest, sly grin, before returning to gnaw slowly on his zombie bagel. Shot 10 Nerf darts at my light switch, from bed. Missed all of them and slept with the lights on, washed bed sheets, didn't put the sheets on till 2 months later. I didn't want to get up to get scissors to open a package I had, so I grabbed the cat and used his claws. It was soft plastic and the cat was indifferent. I tried to skip to the good part of a 33-second YouTube video.
The worst thing you've overheard while pretending to be asleep. My father, telling my mother, that sometimes he just wanted to blank me. I was 5 years old when I overheard this. Being that my dad was a drinker, and full of rage, I believed him, and lived my entire childhood believing he was going to blank me. My walls were thin. I could hear almost anything. My parents argued in what they thought was a quiet voice, about divorce. Then, my dad says, "You can keep the kid. He annoys the F out of me." The next week they told me and signed the papers. My mom and I were sharing a hotel room on a trip, and unfortunately, only had one bed, so we had to share that too. As I was trying to fall asleep, I kept hearing the text tone from my mom's phone going off and her giggling. My parents hate each other, so I knew it wasn't my dad she was texting with. Curious, I opened my eyes just a little bit to see that she was flirting with other men, while on a trip with her family, and I was in fact staring at a pic. I couldn't really go back to sleep after that. When I was around 8 years old, I was supposed to be asleep, but I snuck downstairs to get milk or something. I heard talking going on downstairs, so I stood still and listened. My mom was talking to my brother about how much of a problem I was and how she hated me. She always liked my brother more. I just silently crept back upstairs and cried myself to sleep. Good times.